That's pretty good. I like that. Shh! Quiet, please.
Hello class. Welcome to this week's filmmaking lesson. I'm IB here at Loyalist College. I will be at Walt Disney World to go to Magic Kingdom Main Street USA and to stay at Disney's Contemporary Resort. Alright. So first, we will be doing home video releases. On today, we will be doing Breach 2020 film. Here is the plot in this film. Earth is suffering an extinction-level event. 300,000 survivors are selected to board a spaceship called the Ark, which will take them to a new colony called New Earth. Noah, Cody Kersley, stows away on the Ark impersonating a junior janitor while his pregnant girlfriend Haley, Cassandra Clemente, is put into stasis as a passenger. A grizzled older mechanic called Clay, Bruce Willis, attempts to mentor Noah. Blue, Johnny Messner, and Shady, Johan Reb, two experienced mechanics, are infected by a parasitic force. Meanwhile, Noah spies on Clay and suspects the older mechanic is constructing a bomb. Clay shows Noah that he is brewing moonshine and not building a bomb. That evening the workers have an impromptu party where they tell each other about the loved ones they left behind. Noah tells everyone how he will be reassigned to be a butcher when they reach New Earth. Ortega, Angie Pack, leaves the party to hook up with Blue and finds him welding alone. Blue turns on Ortega, killing her. Later Clay discovers that Noah's girlfriend is Admiral Adams King's, Thomas Jane, daughter. Security Officer Stanley, Timothy V. Murphy, discovers Shady's decomposed body and identifies Blue as the killer. Clay finds Ortega's body while the search for Blue continues. Stanley gathers a security detail and they find Blue attempting to break into the Admiral's quarters. Clay tries to reason with Blue while Stanley demands his surrender. Things take a turn when Blue leaps and kills one of the security team by biting through the officer's throat. Stanley and Teak, Callan Mulvey, are forced to shoot Blue. Chambers, Rachel Nichols, performs an autopsy on Blue's body to find out why he killed Ortega and Shady. Teak meanwhile searches the video feed and sees a recording of Shady's death and Blue's initial infection. Chambers reports that Blue is completely hollowed out and there is a parasite loose on the ship. Chambers discovers that Noah is not a member of the crew but a stowaway and Stanley arrests him, believing Noah to be involved in the strange goings-on. Clay defends Noah successfully and he is released. While the survivors discuss next steps, the three dead crewmen reanimate and attack, killing Stanley. Chambers manages to injure the remaining infected for Teak, Clay, and Noah to escape. The newly infected Stanley starts to release the infected and unlocks the remaining crew's quarters, who are quickly taken over and infected. Clay guides the survivors to the arsenal. Chambers is unable to pinpoint a weakness in the infected, so Clay suggests using a flamethrower. The flamethrower sets off the fire suppression unit, which ruins visibility. Lincoln, Corey Large, reunites with the group just as Teak is suddenly grabbed by the infected and pulled into the mist. Clay runs off to rescue Teak. As Teak and Clay return, Lincoln suggests using the escape pods while Teak proposes the security bay. Lincoln manages to launch an escape pod. But as it leaves the ship, he is shown not to be alone and is killed off screen. The remaining survivors get to the security bay, but Stanley nabs Clay as they try and lock themselves in. Noah shoots Stanley before he can infect Clay and they barricade the door. With 84 days until the Ark reaches New Earth, the survivors try to concoct a plan to fend off the infected and save the passengers. Clay guides Noah through ducts to the Admiral, who they hope will be able to rescue them. Teak then confesses that he was the one who unleashed the infection. Clay reaches the Admiral and Teak confesses that he is responsible for everything that has transpired and is in reality a hardline revolutionary who is against the repopulation of New Earth. The Admiral awakens his security team and proposes to use stronger weapons against the infected. As the infected break into the security room, Clay and Chambers fight them off while Teak is attacked and killed. The Admiral's security team are eventually overwhelmed and Blue chases Noah. As they fight, Noah splashes Blue with cleaning fluid and Blue collapses screaming. As Noah attempts to tell everyone of his finding, the Admiral explodes a grenade, seemingly blowing the infected apart. But just as Chambers and Clay think it's over, they notice the remaining body parts starting to reconnect. The infected form a stronger mutant being and the other infected enter the reactor core. Noah explains the effect the cleaning fluid has and the group head to Clay's moonshine stash to construct better weapons. Just as they are planning their attack, the time to arrival starts to decrease as the infected manipulate the reactor. Clay attacks some infected with his newly constructed weapon. The infected start to infect the passengers. Clay sends Noah to rescue Haley while he holds off the infected. Clay rescues Haley and they make their way towards an escape pod just as the mutant infected being attacks. Chambers is killed in the monster's first attack as Clay attempts to hold it off, but he too is overwhelmed and seemingly killed. Noah and Haley make for the remaining escape pod, but Noah has to separate from Haley to start the launch sequence. He confronts the monster and manages to weaken it with his weapon. Just as Noah attempts to leave, Clay messages him from the bridge. Clay sets the arc to self-destruct as Noah escapes with Haley. Noah and Haley reach New Earth, but as they emerge from the escape pod, Noah spots another human who turns out to be infected. As the film ends, Noah raises his gun and utters "burn 'em all." Alright. On tomorrow, we will be doing Do the Right Thing 1989 film. Here is the plot in this film. Oki is a 25-year-old pizza delivery man living in Bedford-Stuyvesant, with his sister Jade. He and his girlfriend Tina have a toddler son named Hector. Mucky works at a local pizzeria owned by Sal, an Italian-American who has been in the neighborhood for 25 years. Sal's eldest son Pino is racist, and does not get along with Mucky. Because of this, Pino is at odds with both his father, who refuses to leave the majority African-American neighborhood, and his younger brother Vito, who is friendly with Mucky. Many distinctive residents are introduced, including the mayor, a friendly drunk, mother-sister, who watches the neighborhood from her brownstone, Radio Raheem, who blasts Public Enemy on his boombox wherever he goes, and Smiley, a mentally disabled man who meanders around the neighborhood trying to sell hand-colored pictures of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. While at Sal's, Mucky's friend Buggin' Out questions Sal about his Wall of Fame, a wall decorated with photos of famous Italian Americans. Buggin' Out demands that Sal put up pictures of black celebrities since Sal's pizzeria is in a black neighborhood. Sal replies that it is his business, and that he can have whoever he wants on the wall. Buggin' Out attempts to start a boycott over the Wall of Fame. During the day, local teenagers open a fire hydrant and douse the other neighbors to beat the heat wave before officers intervene. After a phone call, Mucky and Pino begin arguing over race. Mucky confronts Pino about his negative attitudes towards African Americans, although the latter's favorite celebrities are black. Various characters express racial insults, Mucky against Italians, Pino against African Americans, Latino Stevie against Koreans, white officer Gary Long against Puerto Ricans, and Korean owner Sonny against Jews. Pino expresses his contempt for African Americans to Sal, but Sal insists that he will not leave the neighborhood. That night, Buggin' Out, Radio Raheem, and Smiley march into Sal's and demand that Sal change the Wall of Fame. Raheem's boombox is blaring and Sal demands that he turn it off, but he refuses. Buggin' Out calls Sal and son skinny bastards and threatens to close down the pizzeria until they change the Wall of Fame. Frustrated and angry, Sal calls Buggin' Out a nigger and destroys Raheem's boombox with a bat. Raheem attacks Sal, leading to a fight that spills out into the street and attracts a crowd. While Raheem is choking Sal, the police arrive. They break up the fight, and apprehend Raheem and Buggin' Out. Despite the pleas of onlookers, one officer refuses to release his chokehold on Raheem, killing him. Realizing that Raheem has been killed in front of witnesses, the officers place his body in the back of a police car and drive off. The onlookers, enraged about Radio Raheem's death, blame Sal and his sons. The mayor tries to convince the crowd that Sal was not responsible for his death, but the crowd remain where they are. Mucky grabs a trash can and throws it through the window of Sal's pizzeria, sparking the crowd to rush into the pizzeria and destroy it. Smiley sets the building on fire, and the mayor pulls Sal, Pino, and Vito out of the mob's way. Sweet Dick Willie, Coconut Sid and Demel turn towards Sonny's fruit and vegetable stand in a failed attempt to destroy it. Firemen and riot patrols arrive to put out the fire and disperse the crowd. After they issue a warning, the firefighters turn their hoses on the rioters, leading to more fighting and arrests. Mookie and Jade sit on the curb, watching in disbelief. Smiley wanders back into the smoldering building and hangs one of his pictures on what is left of Sal's wall of fame. The next day, after an argument with Tina, Mookie returns to Sal. He feels that Mookie had betrayed him, but Mookie demands his weekly pay. The two men argue and cautiously reconcile, and Sal finally pays Mookie. Mr. Senor Love Daddy, a local DJ, dedicates a song to Radio Raheem. The film ends with two quotations that express different views about violence, one by Martin Luther King and one by Malcolm X. It fades to a photograph of the two leaders shaking hands. Prior to the credits, Lee dedicates the film to the families of 6 victims of brutality or racial violence: Eleanor Bumpers, Michael Griffith, Arthur Miller Jr., Edmund Perry, Yvonne Smallwood, and Michael Stewart. Alright. On Wednesday, we will be doing Ladybug's 1992 film. Here is the plot in this film. Chester Lee, Rodney Dangerfield, is desperate for a promotion at work and some respect from his boss. To impress his boss, he claims to have been a good soccer player in his youth and is badgered into coaching a girls' team called the Ladybugs. Dragging his assistant Julie, Jackie Harry, along as assistant coach, Chester figures the gig easy as the Ladybugs, sponsored by his company, Our Dynasty, having dominated previous seasons. If he can get this team to a championship, he will get the promotion. Unfortunately, only one player has returned for the new season. The new team, which includes the boss daughter, Kimberly, Vanessa Shaw, are clueless, make a dreadful start to the season, and the boss is less than impressed. In his personal life, Chester is engaged to Bess, Eileen Graff, who has a son, Matthew, Jonathan Brandis, from a previous marriage. Matthew just happens to be a great athlete, but poor grades get him kicked off the soccer team. Chester invites Matthew to watch the Ladybugs practice and to get some tips. Matthew has a crush on Kimberly from school, and it is partly due to this that Chester persuades him to dress like a girl and play for the team under the name Martha. With only Chester, Matthew and Julie knowing the secret of Martha's identity, the team wins the rest of its games to get to the championship game. Kimberly makes friends with Martha, not knowing she is in fact Matthew. Just before the championship game, Bess finds out that Matthew has been dressing as a girl to play. She becomes angry with Chester, making him drop Matthew from the team. Kimberly, who has not been playing well, is also dropped on the request of Chester's boss. The Ladybugs go down 3-0 in the first half. At halftime, Matthew reveals to Kimberly and the rest of the team that he is Martha. His honesty fires the team up, and with Chester's encouragement, Kimberly scores the winning goal on a penalty kick. As the Ladybugs win the championship, Chester gets his promotion. Bess and Chester get married while Matthew and Kimberly begin dating. Chester is now managing the company's girls' softball team, where the entire team are boys dressed as girls. Chester says to the audience, "I finally got some respect." Alright. On Thursday, we will be doing Lassie 1994 film. Here is the plot in this film. The Turner family moves from Baltimore, Maryland, to the small town of Franklin Falls in Tazewell County, Virginia, hoping to start a new life. The move creates problems for everyone, especially 13-year-old Matt, Tom Gary, who feels lost and alone in his new surroundings, and still has not come to terms with his father Steve's, John Tinney, remarriage to Laura, Helen Slater, after his mother's death. But with the help of a stray collie dog named Lassie that the family takes in, Matt learns to adjust to his surroundings and his family's situation. After Lassie saves Matt's life from an aggressive gray wolf one night, the two form a bond. However, as his father's planned job falls through, Matt, with help from his grandfather, Lynn Collins, Richard Farnsworth, helps convince the family to start a sheep farm, which had been his mother's dream. While the Turners get to work, a ruthless neighbor and wealthy sheep farmer, Sam Garland, Frederick Forrest, will stop at nothing to prevent them from succeeding, because it means that they will be occupying some grazing land that he's used in the past. In addition, Sam has two sons, Josh, Clayton Barkley Jones, and Jim Garland, Charlie Hoffheimer, who attends school with Matt. Both boys dislike Matt, but Josh's hatred mainly stems from jealousy because a fellow student, April Porter, Michelle Williams, whom Josh likes, is more interested in Matt. Eventually Sam, with the help of his sons and henchmen, steals the Turners' new herd of sheep, and kidnaps Lassie. However, she manages to escape, and she and Matt get their sheep back. However, Josh and Jim catch up to them, and in the ensuing scuffle Josh finds himself struggling in a raging river, heading for massive rapids and a waterfall. Matt manages to rescue him, but is unable to save himself. Lassie then rescues Matt, but ends up going over the waterfall herself, to Matt's horror. Sam, after learning that Matt had saved Josh's life, apologizes to the Turners for his actions and for the loss of Lassie. The Turners hold a memorial for Lassie at a nearby tree where Matt's mother had carved her initials years before, and Matt carves Lassie's name above his mother's initials. However, Lassie manages to survive the waterfall, and although injured, she returns home shortly afterwards and is reunited with Matt at his school. Alright. On Friday, we will be doing Let Him Go 2020 film. Here is the plot in this film. In 1963 Montana, retired Sheriff George Blackledge, Kevin Costner, and his wife Margaret, Diane Lane, live with their son James, Ryan Bruce, his wife Lorna, Kaylee Carter, and their newborn grandson, Jimmy. One day while James is out riding his horse, Lorna readies a sink bath for Jimmy. While bathing Jimmy, the wild horse comes running back through the farm without James. George finally finds James dead alongside a creek. It is assumed that he died from being thrown from the horse, breaking his neck. 3 years later, Lorna marries a Donnie Webboy, Will Britton. While out one day, Margaret sees Donnie physically abusing both his wife and now 3-year-old Jimmy. Margaret decides to visit Lorna and Jimmy at their new home, without knowing that Donnie has decided to leave town with Lorna and Jimmy. When she discovers that Donnie, Lorna and Jimmy have left without even saying goodbye, Margaret worries over Jimmy's safety. She eventually convinces George that the situation is dire enough to intervene, and the two set off to find their family. Various sources clue them into the whereabouts of the Webboy family, until finally Margaret and George locate Donnie's uncle, Bill Webboy, Jeffrey Donovan, in Gladstone, North Dakota. Their initial meeting is cold, but Margaret refuses to be intimidated and accepts Bill's invitation to the Webboys' homestead for dinner. At dinner, they meet Donnie's family, including Blanche, Leslie Manville, Donnie's intimidating and disturbing mother. Her charms do not last long as the dinner conversation progresses and an attempt from Margaret to hold Jimmy in her arms turns sour. Not feeling welcome anymore, they leave the Webboy house. George and Margaret meet Lorna at work the next day, and convince her to go back to Montana with them. She then plans to leave her home at midnight, and tells them to wait for her at their hotel. At 2 a.m., instead of Lorna, the Webboys, having supposedly caught Lorna sneaking out, visit George and Margaret at the hotel. Margaret tries to convince Blanche by telling her about the physical abuse Donnie did to Lorna and her child, but Blanche hits Margaret and then tells Donnie to hit her even stronger. George intervenes and later pulls out his pistol but is overpowered by the Webboys and the fingers of his right hand are hacked off by them with a hatchet as a form of punishment for having threatened them with a gun. The local police sheriff sides with the Webboys and tells George and Margaret to leave. They do so but due to George's health, have to make a stop. They stop at Peter's house. Peter, Boo Boo Stewart, is a young Native American man they had met while on the way to the Webboys' estate. Later that night, George takes the car and leaves for the Webboys' house alone. After acquiring a shotgun from their house and starting a fire as a distraction, he attempts to help Lorna and Jimmy escape. He holds Donnie, who was sleeping beside her, at gunpoint and urges her to take Jimmy and leave. Donnie tries to take over George, but George knocks him out with the butt of the shotgun. At the same time, the others are awakened by the smell of fire. Bill comes out of his room and stops Lorna and Jimmy in the upstairs hallway. He takes Jimmy from Lorna and pushes her down the stairs. George points his gun at Bill but Blanche comes hurriedly out the room with her pistol, accidentally kills Bill, and then shoots George. The rest of the Wildboy brothers appear, but George takes control of Blanche's gun and kills them, giving Lorna a chance to escape outside with Jimmy. Margaret and Peter, who had followed George on horseback, receive Lorna and Jimmy outside the Wildboy house. They then go to help George out of the house, but are stopped by Blanche, who shoots and kills George. In retaliation, Margaret kills Blanche with a shotgun. She then takes Lorna and Jimmy and leaves in the car, with the Wildboy house burning in the wake. Margaret thanks Peter for all the help he gave her and says goodbye to him. The film ends with Margaret, Lorna, and Jimmy driving out of Gladstone. Alright. Also on Friday, we will be doing Mouse Hunt 1997 film. Here is the plot in this film. Once wealthy string magnate Rudolf Smuntz dies, and he leaves his factory to his two sons, the well-meaning and optimistic Lars, and venal cynic Ernie, who has ignored the family business to become a chef. When Lars refuses a buyout from a court company called Zepco International, his gold-digger wife April bars him from her home. Meanwhile at Ernie's restaurant, Miriam Crinkle is dining and accidentally eats the head of a cockroach that came from the half-smoked box of Cuban cigars that was given up to Ernie, and the restaurant closes down. It was later mentioned on the news that Miriam Crinkle died of cardiac arrest at Our Lady of Sorrows Hospital when Ernie starts working at a diner. Lars happens across the diner and the brothers reconnect, taking refuge in the abandoned Victorian mansion on the outskirts of town that was left to them by their father, who never lived there and acquired the house through a debt. While sleeping, the two are bothered by a mouse rustling around and, when investigating, find blueprints of the house, discovering that the property was the final design of famed architect Charles Lyle Laru, finished in 1876, and would be worth a fortune if properly restored. Ernie and Lars decide to restore the property and auction it to recover their lives. During the renovations, the two accidentally destroy the mouse's home, prompting the mouse to pull even and sabotage their construction efforts. Conventional methods to get rid of the highly intelligent mouse fail as it repeatedly outwits the brothers. They resort to increasingly drastic methods to remove the mouse, including buying a psychotic cat named Caxilla, whom the mouse drops down a dumbwaiter to his death, and then hiring an eccentric exterminator, Caesar, who is ultimately dragged out of the house by the mouse using his truck's winch, causing massive destruction to the floors and driving Caesar insane. Meanwhile, Ernie and Lars discover the house has an unpaid $1,200 mortgage on it they cannot pay off, since Ernie bought a $1,200 jacuzzi tub. Because of their inability to pay the string factory's workers, the workers go on strike. Ernie learns about Zepco's offer to buy the factory and secretly plans to accept the deal. Lars goes to the string factory to make enough string to pay off the mortgage, in the process getting a small string of his blazer caught on part of a machine, and as he attempts to free himself, he is stripped completely naked except his shoes and socks. After that, he is met by April, who learned about the house's worth from the brothers' lawyer and takes him back. Ernie's attempt to meet with Zepco's representatives fails when he is hit by a bus while trying to impress two Belgian hair models, Ingrid and Hild. Lars informs him that April has given them the money to pay off the mortgage, but the two return to the house to find Caesar being taken away by paramedics. The brothers resume their crusade against the mouse, chasing it down with a shotgun, accidentally destroying part of the floor by shooting the bug bomb that Caesar's had dropped, and then turn on each other when they overhear a voicemail exposing Ernie's attempt to secretly sell the factory and Lars previously declining their offer. During their argument, Lars throws an orange at Ernie, which hits and stuns the mouse. When the two cannot bring themselves to finish the mouse, they seal it in a box addressed to Fidel Castro. The brothers reconcile and finish their renovations. The night of the auction, however, Lars discovers the mouse's box was returned due to insufficient postage and with a hole gnawed out of it, as Lars forgot to weigh the mouse. As the auction progresses, the mouse wreaks havoc. In desperation, the brothers attempt to flush out the mouse by feeding a garden hose into the wall, causing the inner walls to fill, collapsing a wall in the room in which the auction is taking place, and flushing out the buyers. The house collapses as the buyers flee. April leaves Lars for good for a particularly rich and older bidder, and the brothers take solace in the assurance the mouse must have perished in the collapse. The brothers sleep the night in the factory, unaware the mouse has survived and followed them. Witnessing their sorry state, the mouse takes pity on the brothers and decides to help them out. The mouse does this by activating the factory's machinery and dropping a large slice of cheese from a wheel into the wax fiber boiler, producing a ball of string cheese, which the brothers discover. Inspired, the brothers end their war with the mouse and renovate the factory, retrofitting the entire factory to facilitate the manufacturing of cheese-based products. Lars runs the factory and entered a relationship with Hild. Ernie took the position of his chef, and the mouse as their quality control taste tester for new cheese combinations. Alright. Also on Friday, we will be doing Small Soldiers 1998 film. Here is the plot in this film. Top defense contractor Globotech Industries acquires the Heartland Toy Company, and as part of the move, Globotech CEO Gil Mars tells Heartland toy designers Larry Benson and Erwin Wayfair to develop actual live-action toys capable of playing back. Mars selects Larry's soldiers, the Commando Elite, for the project and Erwin's creatures, the Gorgonites, for their enemies, despite Erwin designing them as peaceful educational toys. Faced with a tight 3-month deadline for the toy's release, Larry forgoes safety testing, then uses Erwin's password and chooses Globotech's X1000 microprocessor to activate the toys. Adolescent Alan Abernathy signs off for a shipment of the toys at his family's toy store without his father's consent. He and delivery driver Joe activate the leaders, Archer and Chip Hazard. Alan's neighbor and love interest, Christy Fimple, buys Chip Hazard as a birthday present for her brother, Timmy. Alan returns home to discover Archer in his backpack. He realizes Archer is sentient, but in the meantime, the Commando Elite apparently attack the Gorgonites in the toy store. Alan calls the company and files a complaint. Later, when Larry and Erwin listen to Alan's voicemail, Erwin is terrified to discover the X1000 was designed for smart munitions guidance. A Globotech engineer reveals the artificial intelligence circuit is designed to learn over time, but mass production was scrapped due to issues with electromagnetic pulse shielding. The Commando Elite pursue Alan to his home and attempt to kill him and Archer in the kitchen. Alan is attacked by Nick Nitro, whom he mortally wounds. His parents, Stuart and Irene, arrive at the kitchen, having been alerted by the sounds of the scuffle there. Alan attempts to explain what is going on, but with Archer not supporting his explanation, neither of his parents believe him. The next day, Alan and Archer find the Gorgonites in a dumpster at the store. At home, Alan learns the goal of the Gorgonites is to seek their home Gorgon, which they mistakenly believe to be in Yosemite National Park. Through tapping the Abernathy's phone line, the Commando Elite learn of Alan's interest in Christie, immobilize the Fimples household and take Christie hostage to force Alan into surrendering the Gorgonites. Alan and Archer sneak into the Fimples house to save Christie, but run into her Gwendy dolls, whom the Commando Elite engineered into auxiliary troops using Nick Nitro's chip. The Gwendys quickly subdue Alan. Archer cuts Christie loose from her bonds, and together they save Alan and destroy the Gwendys before escaping. The Commando Elite pursue them in kit-bashed vehicles, but all except Chip Hazard are destroyed in a crash. The two adolescents and Archer return to Alan's house, only to find both their families waiting for them, believing that Alan kidnapped Christie and immobilized the Fimples. This time, Stuart and Irene believe Alan and Christie's account of the Gorgonites and the Commando Elite, but Phil and Marion, Christie's parents, remain skeptical. Erwin and Larry arrive and talk to Alan about his voicemail. At that moment, Chip Hazard attacks the house with a new force of Commando Elite from a hijacked recall shipment by Joe and with more improvised vehicles and weapons. The Commando Elite attack the Gorgonites and the humans, resulting in the house's electricity supply being cut off. Inspired by Erwin's advice to create an EMP blast, Alan heads out to force an overload of the power lines. Christie, Erwin, and Larry head to the Fimples house to turn on all electronic items inside and wedge the circuit breakers open for a larger surge. The Gorgonites emerge and fight back against the Commando Elite. Chip Hazard flies to the top of the power line pole to stop Alan, where he battles and defeats Archer, but finds himself thrust by Alan into the power transformers, triggering the EMP blast, which destroys Chip Hazard along with the remaining Commando elite. Mart arrives in his helicopter during the police and fire department cleanup the next day. He pays Joe, the Fimples, and the Abernathy's for damages, as well as buying their silence from the media, and orders Larry and Irwin to repurpose the Commando elite for military use. Among the craziness of the aftermath, Alan and Christy part on highly amicable terms, having agreed to start a relationship with each other. Alan later discovers the Gorgonites have screened themselves from the EMP blast by hiding underneath the Fimple's large satellite dish. The Abernathy's bring the Gorgonites to Yosemite National Park, where Alan sends them out in a large toy boat from his father's store to find their home of Gorgon. Alright. Also on Friday, we will be doing the SpongeBob movie Sponge on the Run 2020 film. Here is the plot in this film. In Bikini Bottom, Plankton works on a new plan to steal the Krabby Patty formula until Karen argues that SpongeBob is the real responsible for all his previous failures and not Mr. Krabs. That same night, Plankton sneaks into the Krusty Krab and scans a Krabby Patty to print the formula, but SpongeBob, inadvertently, causes Plankton to fall into a deep fryer and lose the formula while the latter was searching for his keys. This leads Plankton to understand that Karen was right in her suspicions. Meanwhile, in Atlantic City, selfish ruler King Poseidon has just used up all the slime from his latest sea snail, which is necessary to keep him rejuvenated. Since sea snails are almost extinct, Poseidon decrees the obtaining of a new snail. Plankton finds out about this and kidnaps SpongeBob's pet snail Gary so that SpongeBob will go to find him and thus not interfere with Plankton's plans. The next morning, SpongeBob learns from Patrick that Gary was taken to Atlantic City. However, Plankton offers Otto, a robot built by Sandy, to take them to the city. Without SpongeBob cooking Krabby Patties, the Krusty Krab's enraged customers destroy the restaurant despite Mr. Krabs and Squidward's efforts to stop them. Otto drives SpongeBob and Patrick to an old western town where they meet a tumbleweed spirit named Sage. Sage reveals that they are in a dream and must overcome a special mission to continue their search. He gives them a challenge coin that will engrave them into a tavern haunted by ghostly zombie pirates. Following a small musical number with Snoop Dogg, SpongeBob and Patrick discover that the pirates' souls are trapped by an evil spirit known as El Diablo and their mission is to free them. El Diablo traps them in his office, but they accidentally disintegrate him with the sunlight by uncovering some window curtains. The pirates' souls are freed and SpongeBob and Patrick continue on their travel until Otto wakes them up, thus revealing that everything was a dream. Now accompanied by Sage, SpongeBob discovers that Poseidon is using Gary's slime to stay young, and as soon as it runs out, he will have him enslaved with the rest of his previous dried snails. Arriving at Atlantic City, Sage warns the pair not to be distracted by the city's attractions, which they ignore. After a fun-filled night, SpongeBob and Patrick discover that they have lost the challenge coin that allowed them to be brave, but they still reach into Poseidon's palace. When they try to take Gary away, both are arrested. Back in Bikini Bottom, Plankton arrives at the Krusty Krab and a depressed Mr. Krabs gives him the formula because nothing is the same without SpongeBob. Finding out that SpongeBob and Patrick will be executed in a luxury show, Mr. Krabs, Squidward, Sandy and a redeemed Plankton decide to go find and save them. In prison, Sage reveals to SpongeBob and Patrick that the challenge coin never had powers and that the bravery came from themselves. When SpongeBob is about to be executed because Patrick had made a deal with Poseidon's Chancellor to save himself, Mr. Krabs, Squidward, Plankton and Sandy burst into the show to testify in favor of SpongeBob. Along with Patrick, each recounts an experience they had in their childhood with SpongeBob when they were at a summer camp, earning the audience's gratitude. Afterwards, the group perform a musical number to distract Poseidon and taking Gary away. Poseidon realizes the distraction and orders his guards to capture the group. SpongeBob and his friends manage to sneak around the palace to the exit, but are once again cornered when Otto forgets to pick them up. Poseidon confronts them but gleefully orders the charges dropped for amusing him. However, he also does it on the condition that SpongeBob gives Gary and never come back for him. Remembering Sage's words, SpongeBob gains courage and refuses, arguing that his friends went out of their way to help him in the rescue. When Poseidon finds out that he has no friends, reveals that he needs the slime for his appearance, SpongeBob offers to be his friend and tells him that beauty is on the inside and that he doesn't need to hide it. This causes Poseidon to remove all his arrangements and returns to his true appearance. Everyone accepts him for who he is and Poseidon lets SpongeBob stay with Gary. Otto drives the group back home while Poseidon releases all his enslaved snails to accompany them, and Bikini Bottom ends up becoming a sea snail refuge. Alright. Also on Friday, we will be doing Wild Mountain Time 2020 film. Here is the premise in this film. Conflicts in an Irish family arise when the patriarch threatens to hand over their farm to an American nephew instead of his own son. Alright. Also on Friday, we will be doing Yours, Mine and Ours 2005 film. Here is the plot in this film. Frank Beardsley is a widowed U.S. Coast Guard Rear Admiral who moves back to his hometown of New London, Connecticut with his 8 kids from his previous marriage. Helen North, a widowed handbag designer with 10 kids, 4 biological, 6 adopted, takes a more relaxed approach to life. After unexpectedly encountering each other at a restaurant while on separate dates, they do so again at their 30-year high school reunion. Instantly rekindling their old sparks, Frank and Helen quickly decide to marry in a private ceremony, to the Beardsley and North kids' shock. They move into a new home on the same property where they shared their first kiss, joined by the North children's numerous pets, including a pot-bellied pig and a hamster, and Frank's housekeeper, Mrs. Munion. It soon becomes apparent that Frank has a very regimented view of how things should be done, whereas Helen is an artist, a designer by trade, with a more free-spirited, lackadaisical attitude. Their respective children are shocked by the news of their parents' quick wedding and do not get along well at first, even turning a planned lighthouse renovation project into an all-out paint fight. Frank's oldest son, William, calls a meeting among his siblings and explains that they can better rid themselves of their new situation by joining forces to make their parents' respective philosophical differences apparent, which will cause them to fight. But while doing so, they gradually begin to bond, attending their siblings' soccer games and helping William in his class president campaign. A short time later, Frank and Helen attend a formal Coast Guard dinner where his superior, Commandant Sherman, officially offers him the opportunity to be his successor. He respectfully declines it, citing both his obligation to the Coast Guard Academy and his new family. Meanwhile, as the young children have a food fight upstairs in the bedroom, the older ones throw a wild party downstairs. When their parents return to find the place in total chaos, Frank is furious, and while Helen is also upset, her more laid-back approach only angers him more. This causes their worst fight yet, and the children, realizing how happy their parents have been together, begin to realize that they might have pushed things too far. The next day, Frank informs Helen that he has decided to take the position as commandant after all, and they schedule a family meeting to inform the children. As the children return home from school, jubilant over having defended their younger siblings from bullies and with the news of William having won the class election, Frank quickly deflates the mood by telling them of his decision to accept the new position. Feeling guilty for having torn their parents apart, they set about undoing their mistakes, even enlisting Helen to aid in their efforts. Together, the older ones launch the family's boat in an effort to catch Frank, thereby fulfilling his previous dream of having an all-family sailing team that failed earlier, but he is convinced that Helen no longer wants to be with him, until he sees her turn on the lighthouse spotlight, a reference to a story Frank had told her about a beautiful female lighthouse keeper. Successfully reunited, they tie the knot once again, this time with the children involved. Alright. That's all the home video releases we got. So second, we will be doing TV series over home video releases. On today, tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, we will be doing Chakato Anime Kimono Friends 3 episode 20, 21, 22 and 23. And we will be doing Winnie the Pooh on Valentine's Day and the Three Little Piglets. Alright. That's all the TV series over home video releases we got. So third, we will be doing Monkey Pictures and Roman Cow Productions and Donkey Teeth Company shorts. It's about Tom and Jerry Dog Trouble 1942. Did you know why Dog Trouble is the short by Tom and Jerry? This short will look like Tom and Jerry team up to stop Spike the Bulldog from mauling both of them. Alright. That's all the shorts we got. So fourth, we will be doing Samsung Galaxy S21. The story continues with Mai plays volleyball with other girls named Zakuyo Iman and Sana Futaba. As the game starts to continue, Mai was relieved that any games they join is volleyball game. As they headed to Mai, Sana catches the ball and Mai handles over the ball to win this game. As the game ends, Mai wins the match. Mai has free time to watch TV called Non Non by Ori Nonstop and is relayed by Sakuzenshin and Jekadal on Adult Swim Canadian television channel. As Mai goes out to Gatineau with the magical girls, Mai was sure that animatronic is around here somewhere. And so they made it to their hotel. However, Sana Futaba said to Mai that animatronic is dangerous and she met Gaston at the room on TV. So when Mai refuses to listen to Beatrice's words to stay married, Sana turns off the TV, and Mai goes to sleep. Alright. That's all I got for today, let's do some work now.
Alright, let's do some work now. Hey guys, it's Dark Chocolate Day. National Dark Chocolate Day. Yeah, is that so? That's right. So you wanna come with me to Magic Kingdom again? Yep. Yeah. 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 Okay then. Let's go to Magic Kingdom and we'll go to stay at Disney's Contemporary Resort, okay? Okay, that's what you wanted. Good. Good.